Hi, everyone. We are going to get started in 30 seconds or so. We are just waiting everyone to join in this webinar. Thank you. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to 2022 Outlook webinar from GEP. I'm Shireen Gunglur. I'm the Vice President for Software Sales for GEP, covering the Asia Pacific region. I have my colleague Lalit joining in to do this keynote, and he calls this New Solutions for the Never Normal. With that, I'll hand it off Lalit to take us and kick off this keynote session. Lalit.
Thank you, Shireen, and then welcome to all. I'm the Vice President for Consulting and Services for GEP and lead the practice here in Asia Pacific. Look forward to a very interactive evening with all of you. So why don't we start with some of the macroeconomic trends here, right? So the first one I'd like to point out is the GDP growth. What IMF said in January this year was that we would expect this to be lower at 4.4% compared to last year. And this was before the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and I expect this to be revised lower further, right? Going to energy costs, I could see a scenario easily where we will be at about $120 to $150 for oil if this conflict goes up or the sanctions stay longer. Again, kind of a problem which is linked to that, inflation and then the interest costs. Just 6 days ago, Fed raised the interest costs for the first time in 3 years to 0.25%. And they've also penciled in increases for every single meeting for the next 6 meetings going forward. This would mean about somewhere around 2% for the US, and of course, the others will follow suit. So this is, again, an important problem for all buyers to consider. Finally, looking at talent, the great migration before and now the great resignation, this has been going strong. And we need to really innovate and think about what we should do differently to try and retain our talent. So with these 4 guiding macroeconomic factors, let's go into the themes for today's discussion. And there are 5 that we'd like to point out. 1, how are we dealing with inflation? Second, what do we think of the overall supply chain volatility? How do we deal with that? Third, how do we make our businesses more sustainable? Fourth, where are we on digitalization? And then what are the next few, what are the important trends of the next few years? And then finally, how do we retain talent? So taking on the first one around inflation, let's talk about what we've seen our companies do. So some of our clients, what they've done is they've set up control towers. So they're basically measuring inflation very minutely, granularly, and so on. They're doing very specific market analytics by category, by supply market to look at who's at risk. And then finally, linking this with finance, linking it with, various other departments like sales and so on to see what are the mitigation toolkits there. And one of the things that you can see from the analysis is on the right-hand side, where we look at a prospective view going forward in terms of what would be the inflation forecast on spend. And as you can see, the sizes of the rectangular boxes are basically the spend amounts, and the colors basically tell you where the inflation is going to be, from yellow going at 3 to 10%, to orange going to about 10 to 20%, and the deep reds really at 20% plus. And this is a view that we built for one of our clients prior to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So this is all the more relevant now. What it does is gives you 3 things. 1, it is a forward-looking view based on actual cost drivers. Second, it allows you to be very actionable because you can now isolate it to category by category, supplier by supplier view. And finally, you can start taking proactive measures. How to plan additional negotiations, how to look at additional sources, even going back to users and saying, look, let's relook at spec, let's downgrade them, let's manage our costs better, right? So this is one. Moving to supply chain volatility, we see a lot of reconfiguration happening, and it's going to continue on for various reasons. 1, improving resilience. 2nd, bringing supply centers closer to demand centers. improving sustainability, reducing transportation, and so on. And then, of course, geopolitical factors, see what's happening right now. So what we've seen companies do are use more and more sophisticated approaches. So going beyond just your supplier to their tier one, their tier twos, looking at which countries they're based, looking at how big they are, and by categories, which ones actually create, what kind of risk profile, right? So quantifying that, and then doing a simulation and scenario modeling based on various scenarios, high oil, regional conflicts in various regions, and so on. So you can start simulating and seeing what part of your supply chain gets disrupted. And the focus very much now, I think, has shifted from having a globally optimized cost position on supply to looking at how do I increase supply redundancy and making sure that I do get the supplies on time. Moving on to ESG, which is again a big topic. Here we believe procurement does play a huge role. And then what we've seen them do, what we've seen good companies do here is three things. One, looking at their upstream value chain and measuring ESG scores for their supply partners and linking that to buying decisions, to portfolio awards to their suppliers. Second, getting the ESG KPIs and associating them with the right monetary values, whether they are carbon costs or other costs which are associated. And third, really, provisioning them to all the managers to take decisions based on their ESG scores. So one of the examples that you can see is, again, a spend analytics example where we see what the scope 3 emissions are for a company, where they have a spend of about USD 2.5 billion, and you can see a carbon footprint of 1.75 million tons. And this record is broken down by category, by suppliers, and you can even break it down by regions. And as the supply awards change, this picture can look more different based on who you're buying from and how ESG friendly they are. So this is, again, an example of how you could try and manage this better. Now, for the remaining two topics, let me hand over to Shireen, and he can take you through the digitalization to start with. Over to you.
Thanks, Lalit. So when we are looking at digitalization and where the trend is going to be, what we have seen is companies embarked on digitalization, and then overnight they had to change with the pandemic hitting them and work from home model coming in, that they had to kind of support the work from home model. So the investments have gone into collaboration tools and connectivity. And also business continuity became important. So they were focusing on getting the access anywhere on any device so that the employees working from home can continue the business continuity program that they had to put in place. Apart from that, we've also seen in the last 2 years, companies look at IT costs and start kind of investing selectively and in some areas on the cloud apps and infrastructure. I think they're seeing the benefits. So moving forward in the next 4 years, what we see cloud landscape becoming more and more prevalent. What that also means is the accessibility to data, internal data as well as external data comes in, which also means the companies and the business users within the companies can start looking at market intelligence, benchmark insights, and cost drivers and should cost modeling to help them then look at how do we manage inflation, or how do I build supply chain resilience, and so on and so forth. Similarly, you will also have these control towers being used to sense and monitor any changes that are happening, which will then help them make those adjustments needed, whether it has got to do with inflation management or whether it has got to do with the supply chain resiliency that they want to build in. And moving on, we also see innovation happening on cloud, and now we see low-code, no-code cloud platforms coming in as state-of-the-art. What that means is it empowers the business users to then make the amendments and adjustments in their applications for the templates or the functionality they want, rather than going to IT teams to make it happen for them. So you have these low-code, no-code platforms bringing agility and strategic edge to the companies, where they can make changes to their processes and then get on addressing their customer requirements. Other is, we have heard about AI and ML, and we will see more and more use cases of AI and ML coming in. ML coming in to make sure repetitive tasks are taken care of, whereas AI can come in a lot of situations where it is complex and you have these data lakes coming in to come up with the unique insights which can then help companies actually make those decisions and investments to address the client requirements. So that's digitalization and where I see moving. Let's move to the next topic, which is on how do we retain talent. So when we are looking at retaining talent, we see 4 key areas. One is adopt flexible model. I think that's a no-brainer. We've seen companies pledge to flex models. So it will be a role-based model. It will be more pragmatic approach there. So there are certain roles which probably may need to go back to office, and there are other roles which can work from anywhere. Then the other is with all these new things coming in, employees are expecting upskills to happen, because if you want to use AI, ML, the low code, no code platforms, the digitalization happening, and then employees want to be trained on that, and so that then they can deliver the goals and objectives of the companies. And companies are taking a hard look at all these repetitive tasks happening so that they can remove that out of day-to-day for employees and try and use the robotic process automations and bots to help remove all that repetitive tasks, make it more efficient and more easy for them to get work and tasks done. And the last is having that connection with the employees. So more frequent connections and more frequent feedback so that the bond is established is what we see as 4 models that companies are looking at to retain their talent. So with that, we come to end of our keynote and we move to the next session. So thank you for joining us. Hope this was useful. Next up is a panel discussion, which will be moderated by my colleague, Michael Seitz. You have leaders coming from Microsoft, Bridgestone, and Fluxym joining in and actually sharing their thoughts on what will be the trends for 2022. So please do continue and join the panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharveen and Lalit, for the introduction of today's topic. My name is Michael Seitz. I'm a VP of GEP based in Shanghai, and I look after our North Asia business and operations. With me today here for the panel discussion are 3 very experienced supply chain and procurement pros. Welcome to Eric van Steen. He is a vice president of supply chain at Bridgestone. And Eric has more than 25 years experience, both in consulting and industry roles, and has spent most of his work life in Asia. At Bridgestone, he is responsible for planning, procurement, and logistical activities across China and APAC, directly reporting to the regional CEO. Sash Kumar, he is a regional business leader at Microsoft. He can be seen as a veteran with 33 years of experience. And he has a great background in designing and implementing supply chain solutions. For Microsoft, he's responsible for developing the business strategy for manufacturing industries in Asia. And Jasmine, welcome. Jasmine Reswani. She's a senior S2B advisor at Fluxym, based in Singapore. She brings more than 10 years of experience helping clients in finance and procurement digital transformation across different industries and countries. So welcome to all of you. I'm very pleased to have you here today, to have you virtually here today, and to hear your thoughts on our topic for this panel on procurement and supply chain outlook for 2022. At GEP, we are publishing every year an outlook for the next year, focused on procurement and supply chain. And this covers macroeconomical topics that are going to influence the supply chain field, but then also key themes for supply chain and procurement that we see will be of key importance for the next year. And some of the areas on the 2022 report were around resilient supply chains, the trend towards regionalization of supply chains, but then also the rising inflation that we have. What we didn't predict is that when we were writing the report, that Russia is invading Ukraine, and we now have a new war in the heart of Europe, which has a big impact on supply chains. So we kind of closed 2021 with COVID getting better, and there were a lot of supply chain issues that companies are battling with. Now with the impact on supply chain from the war that we have, do you see now that the companies are better prepared for supply chain disruptions and risks like what we had 1 to 2 years ago? And I would like to ask Eric first on this question, leading the topic for Bridgestone, to hear your thoughts on the status now of Bridgestone versus 1 to 2 years ago.
Thank you, Michael, and happy to be part of the panel today. Yeah, it's probably a little bit difficult to speak on behalf of other companies, but I would like to think that most companies have been better prepared for the things that are happening today. For Bridgestone, I can certainly attest to that. Both, I would say, in terms of mindset, so our relationship related to risk and the topic of risk management and disruptions, clearly heartened by the developments over the last two years, which have been pretty much non-stop, as we all know. But also in terms of processes, systems, procedures, etc. However, I wouldn't say we're there yet. And part of the challenges I think we all recognize is that it's difficult to legislate, to prepare for, or to mitigate any and all of the risks that are coming to you, right? The one in relation to the one you brought up just now, Michael, Ukraine, the situation in Russia, Ukraine, is one that, well, maybe some had predicted might happen, but I think for most of us it came as a surprise. Now, at some level, you could say that's just one source of, in our case, raw materials, or it's just one location where we have activities, factories, etc. So it could and should perhaps be part of any business continuity plan. But the scale of which the disruption is happening is something that I don't think we would have been fully prepared for, even if we had sort of incorporated that. So we're adjusting. So I think for us is continuing to invest in the systems and the processes that help us to be more proactive, but also to make some structural changes in relation to, for example, selecting and approving new raw material suppliers, which is very relevant in this particular case. So yeah, it's keep working at it and probably accelerate the activities as well is what we are trying to do at the moment. But it's hard to keep up with all of the challenges and disruptions that are happening at the moment.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point, Eric. You never know what's coming. Jasmine, how do you see that from the work with the companies that you have? Are they better prepared now?
Well, in a certain way, thanks for asking this question. Is what we have seen so far is all the COVID-19 pandemic. It's had actually huge impact on how the organization call for unprecedented levels of collaboration and visibility. And actually what the COVID-19 pandemic, but also all the trade war, they're actually exposed considerable weaknesses and shedding the light for intelligent supply chain. So actually, what we noticed in the different projects that we have been running so far is a significant shift from focusing on maintaining the business continuity to how to better anticipate the future supply chain disruption and risk. So global company, actually, they took a significant leap forward to accelerate the digital transformation and automate the processes, while the accessing the data in almost real time and relying on network intelligence. So what we have seen so far is the company increased the effective supplier collaboration, and they require more and more full transparency on real-time operational data, such as shipment status, inventory levels, capabilities, and subcontractor networks. So basically what happened so far is we are talking more and more on having companies to get ready with advanced predictive and analysis capabilities to help mitigate any risks. So I think the company are getting more and more prepared for future supply chain disruptions.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks. Sash, what are your thoughts when you look at companies now and 2 years ago?
Yeah, we've been working with a number of our customers ever since the start of COVID, and two things happened. One is at the strategic level, companies realized that they were suddenly exposed by the lack of visibility into the supply chain because of COVID. Logistics disruptions, warehouse centers, distribution centers shutting down, factories shutting down. So they never had that tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 visibility. So I think the first thing they did was some strategic level, implement a control tower view. I think that was the right thing they did, and it's helping them now. The second thing was they realized that real-time communication, while we all take that for granted in the world we are in today, actually didn't exist in many of the supply chain organizations and companies. People couldn't really collaborate in the virtual world. In fact, many of our customers in Japan, employees could not even take laptops to their home, or they didn't have the ability when they're working from home to collaborate in real time. It was kind of not the cultural thing. So we realized that communication is very important. So I think visibility, communication, that real-time collaboration, setting up that up was very critical, and I think that many companies have done. The tactics that you would adopt today are very different than tactics that you adopted during the COVID crisis. I mean, there's a different problem, different tactics. I think today, tactically companies need to do different things. And the scale, as Eric also said, is different in terms of the impact in energy costs, for instance, impact in terms of some of the commodities that are being disrupted. As in, they are on a completely different scale from what we saw during COVID. So, we'll have to do very different things, but I think the tooling, the infrastructure, some of these things exist today, so that's helping companies kind of at least handle these crises better.
Thank you, Sash. Yeah. There were good insights already here. And I already heard some thoughts from Sash and Jasmine, also Eric, on what companies can do or should do now to really look into that, or improving that, the resilience of their supply chains. I would like to ask all of you, and maybe having or trying to have a prioritization for companies. Yeah, what should they focus on right away? If they haven't done, what do you see as the basics in order to really build up resilient supply chains? And Sash, do you wanna just start or continue on that question?
Sure. I think the thing that companies, some of them doing, some of them still need a lot of work to do, is look at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, sometimes even go to tier 4 supply chain to see not just the supply chain, but also the ecosystem of the supply chain. So who are my tier 3 suppliers? Who are my tier 4 suppliers, right? Probably to the extent that, you may even know more than them in terms of what the supply chain is. Give an example, right? So if you look at the current crisis, nobody thought that it could impact the semiconductor industry in Taiwan, as an example. No one realized that neon gas is which of course is one of the gases that is used in semiconductor manufacturing, is actually supplied. A large majority comes from Ukraine. So these are things that people didn't realize in terms of, okay, I have a certain thing that I'm using, but what would be the impact in terms of the war in my supply chain, right? So this is where I think getting to that tier 2, tier 3 visibility, and then of course beyond that, how do you mitigate the effects of these, right? So that's something that we can talk about as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, thank you. Eric, what's on your priority list that you're working on for Bridgestone?
Yeah, for Bridgestone, maybe before I go into that, as a general observation or a response to your question, I would say it depends obviously on the value chain of a company, right? So a degree of segmentation, a degree of prioritization, as you also alluded to, I think is key, right? So understanding who and where are your most important customers, who and where are your most important suppliers, what are your manufacturing processes or other value add activities that sit in between, and which are the ones that are most key to the success of your long-term success of your business, and your profitability, if you wish, as well as what are the areas that are most exposed to weakness. So assessing that, I think, is a key first step. I think then I think it's then about working on both sides of the value chain, or all three parts, if you include, as you should, your own activities as well. So working with your supply base, develop partnerships, proceed to dual sourcing activities where possible. In our case, we do that, the dual sourcing, but it's challenging because in order to accept, validate, qualify a raw material to be included in a tire manufacturing process, a lot of quality steps needs to be verified. So that's a lengthy process, and it is an expensive process because we want to ensure, absolutely ensure that the quality can be obtained. So doing that across all your entire supply base is a lengthy and a difficult and a costly exercise to do, but something that we're obviously have been doing and will continue to do. But also building partnerships is, I think, quite key. I think the other one is around mentality, right? Moving from sort of a reactive stance to a more proactive stance. So we're engaging at a regional level and a global level on far more sort of proactive risk management programs to really identify in a more structured way, a more dedicated way, where our potential pain points, where our risks are, and then start to actively act upon them and start to address and mitigate them. And as Raj already also said, Sash, right, the other key is around digitalization, right? It's the key word, it's the buzzword for a reason, because without that, clearly, you're not going to succeed, both in terms of mapping that landscape, as already said, first, second tier, picking up alerts when something happens in that value chain, your own environment, where is the demand, where is the supply, the demand sensing activities, all of those things come into play. So those are just some of the examples that I think companies are working on, and definitely Bridgestone is engaging with as well.
Thank you, Eric. I like the thought around the mentality change, from reactive to proactive, because that's something really what everyone working in supply chain, no matter what level of function you have, need to embrace as a new habit. That's an important one. My next thought, and I mentioned it in the introduction a little bit, is around inflation. Right now, Asia is not as hardly hit, it seems, as Europe and the US. where inflations are 5, 6, 7%. For example, in China, the inflation of last year was 1%. Obviously, it's different in every country in Asia on inflation. For some of the categories or products that are coming out of Ukraine, or such you mentioned with the neon gas, there might be certainly a hike in prices, and that will just further add on to the inflation pressure that we have. How do you see the inflation and the risks coming from inflation in Asia and for the companies you work with, or Eric, for you when you consider the different countries in Asia? What should companies do, like both CFOs and supply chain leads or procurement leads for that? Eric, you want to talk from a Bridgestone lens first?
Sure. Look, I think inflation is affecting everyone everywhere at the moment, right? And all the data points are out there. We experience it in our daily lives. So I don't think it's necessarily just restricted to Europe and the US, although to your point, there will be differences globally and even within regions, particularly one as diverse as Asia. So yes, there is an impact. In fact, we are right in the middle of that because clearly our raw material prices have gone up significantly over the last, 6-12 months. Whether that goes from natural rubber to some degree, or oil-related derivatives like synthetic rubber and other components that impact what goes into the tire making process. So we are also faced with that very difficult decision around how do we keep those costs as low as possible, which clearly is difficult because these are commodity markets and it's very difficult to influence them. And secondly, how do we, and if so, to what extent do we need to pass those costs on to our customers as well, which clearly we're very reluctant to do, but it's unfortunately unavoidable in a number of cases, given the massive increases that we've seen. Clearly, we're then in a way contributing to the very same effect, right? So, but yeah, it's challenging. So, look, I don't think there's any magic. We are looking to reduce our cost where possible, making more effective use of the resources that we have, both in terms of the materials that go into the manufacturing process, but also in other ways. And that's how we're trying to navigate through this difficult times. But it's very hard to, I find at least, I don't have any specific recommendations for the CFOs. To find ways to mitigate and address this without effectively contributing as well to the whole process. So.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Sash, any thoughts from your side on inflation?
Yeah, I think to echo what Eric said, right? This is actually even before the current prices. We've seen some of the, at least in the chemical space, some of the highest prices. One of my customers, a paint manufacturer, mentioned that these were the highest prices he's seen in his lifetime, pre-Ukraine. Vinyl acetate monomer, probably 50% increase. Olefin prices and chemicals, again, huge increases. Palm oil price, for instance, in the commodity space. These are all commodities, so not much you can do in terms of sourcing strategies and stuff because they're all kind of driven by market pressures, right? So the only thing that you can do is apply kind of more lean techniques in the supply chain. So what can I do to kind of minimize my exposure especially in a very volatile commodity market. Do you want to sit on a huge amount of inventory, or do you want to manage an inventory better? So the whole idea of inventory exposure, working capital optimization, making sure stuff is in the right place. And the second thing is, of course, probably moving more into the actual manufacturing areas, improving quality, improving manufacturing practices, lean practices, to show that you're not exposed in terms of, quality rejects or things of that nature where you're kind of wasting material, right? So that way, you can reduce the amount. So I think that's the imperative. Of course, some of my customers are also looking at, if this continues, do I have an alternate material strategy? Not alternate sourcing, alternate material. So R&D working on things like, can I find a new additive? Can I find something else that comes into the supply chain that will help, make this product better? So those are things that, customers are trying to rapidly innovate to change their exposure. But inflation is here, we know it, and that's the reality.
Yep. Good points, good thoughts. Thanks. Jasmine, anything you see your clients are specifically doing?
Well, for them, actually, inflation is no news, and we all know that inflation and shortage are not going anywhere fast. So actually, companies even located in Asia are not spared by the inflation. As we have seen, the rates have soared across the globe, which has been reflecting various factors, including elevated commodity prices, supply bottleneck, and rising also the transportation cost, and all this also COVID-19 related base effect. So basically, yeah, we'll still have to face the shortage and the delays along the supply chain, which already have been notable. We see, of course, in the microchip and semiconductors used in car manufacturing and electronics. So what we have seen, and actually resonate to what Eric said before, is we have seen the manufacturers that now pass many higher input costs into the customers. So this has been leading actually the inflation level in the region for many years. But actually CFO and CPOs are natural partners in business. So what they can do is, of course, working together when it comes to improve margin and reduce the risk and high profitability. So what they can do is try to get ahead of the data for the advantage. So to focus on business, to know the market, to get data intelligence solutions. Also to look into the contracts by leveraging all the legal clause binding and secure prices by getting more commodities or spend on a contract. So if they can buy in bulk and store it in the markets, if the market allows it. And of course, more focusing on cash management. So whenever it is possible to collect receivable, try to stretch out the account payables, access the liquidities, the key also to build the supply chain resilience. So CFO and CPOs, they're working hand in hand to have more resilience and to increase actually the collaboration and have immediate effect on how we can build, I would say, more resilience into the supply chain.
If I may just build on that point, and Jasmine rightly brought up the logistics space, right, which is a major challenge for us as well, but both globally as within Asia Pacific, and kind of links back to the point that Sash made around leaning, right? So one of the things we've been doing is to say, how can we put more tires in a single container, right? Obviously, without impacting the quality of the transportation process and the impact it has on the tire itself, but there's different stacking methodologies that we can apply. We've accelerated some of those things so that to ship the same amount of tires, we need less containers. which apart from price per container is also needed because the capacity simply is not there, right? So yeah, those are some of the simple ways, but could add up quite quickly. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of US dollars on a monthly basis. Reduce some of your costs to mitigate some of the impact of some of this inflation.
I would like to ask you, and you covered quite some elements already, to summarize just very briefly in 2 or 3 bullet points. What are the key things CPOs or supply chain heads should focus on in 2022? Let's keep it brief so that it's easy to stay in mind. Yeah? And then we wrap it up and hand it over to the next team. As such.
Yeah, quickly summarize 3 things. Number 1, I think supplier risk analysis. I think not enough is being done to look at the overall supplier base, suppliers risk analysis. So kind of not just geopolitical risk, but environmental risk, the financial risks, all of that in terms of real-time visibility into a company's exposure. That, of course, will impact your sourcing strategies. The number 2 thing that I would say is the insights into a supply chain. So like a control tower view of what's happening across a supply chain. I think that's still something that companies need to implement. And the third one, I think, is insights in terms of not just analytics that come out of the box, but more in terms of looking at machine learning is needed to look at what are the things that are missing across maybe commodity categories. Is the impact of one raw material having on something downstream, right? Those are things that humans find it difficult to correlate, and where machine learning can bring about that kind of outcome quite easily. So I think these are the 3 things. Like I said, risk analysis, visibility, and ML-driven outcomes.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And Jasmine?
Yeah, so to resonate to my 2 colleagues here, so to increase, of course, the collaboration with appropriate external technology provider and consultant firms. So really engage strong partners to help the company to have more risk, to identify the risk and all the opportunity to drive actually innovation and to identify new products, materials, capabilities, and offerings. So to invest in such a integrated database to get the compelling data intelligence from various sources, not only rely on internal provided by the team, but also to have like external giving by external basis. So have a real shift on how to calculate the risk and the performance metrics. So have this visibility on how we want to calculate the risk and the different performance metrics for our suppliers.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jasmine. Thanks. That marks the end of a very insightful, interesting discussion. Thanks a lot, Jasmine, Sach, and Eric, for spending the last 30 minutes and sharing your thoughts about 2022 with us. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for listening. I will hand over now to my colleague Ayushi, who will guide us through a brief software demo of GEP. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and all the panelists for giving us such insightful information on today's agenda. Now, I am going to take you to the technology hand of GEP. And now let us talk about some key challenges of the current market situation discussed today, like increase in the inflation and the need of supply chain resilience due to war crisis and pandemic conditions, and how GEP software actually offers a robust, unified, and intuitive platform to address the procurement and supply chain networks needs of an organization. I am going to today take you through some extended capabilities of our platform like category workbench, third-party risk management, and also some guided buying capabilities. Moving on to the platform, you can see the first function or the first module I will be covering today, which is the category workbench, which actually provides a holistic overview in a graphical manner for a particular category, including all the data like the projects, the sourcing events, the spend allocation according to different region, business unit, categories, and also suppliers. As I move below, you can also see there are graphical representation of various cost drivers which contribute to the particular category. For instance, MRO category, which I have taken here for today's session. Now, due to unfavorable geopolitical conditions and ongoing increase in the stealth Omicron variant, the prices of critical categories have actually gone high. And now buyers need to relook and analyze the various procurement strategies of their main categories in order to minimize the supply chain variation and achieve the supply chain resilience for selected categories. Herein, our category workbench solution actually helps the category managers to get a holistic overview of the data which is available for a category. Not only the categories, it also helps the category managers to trace the subcategory information in a particular dashboard at a single place. You can see in the overview that we have details regarding the spend, the budget of the category. And further, if I move on to the sections like cost drivers, it will help me determine what are the key contributors to the structure of the cost for a particular commodity. You can see over here that in the cost driver section, I can see that there are some fuel cost drivers and some freight charges cost drivers which are involved as a part of the total cost of this commodity. I have multiple market indices which contribute to a particular cost, and my platform actually helps me determine the forecasted pricing increment or decrement for a particular commodity. I can actually select market indices for a particular cost driver and determine the contribution of that cost driver into the total cost. Further, our market insights team is a team which actually curates and consolidates various trends and insights of market information related to this category into market insights. It creates multiple reports. Like these are some sample reports which I have on my screen to show you as part of today's session. We can also create multiple reports on requests of the users. And these will help the category managers get a better overview of what is happening in the latest trends and the latest news of this category. We also have a dedicated strategy section. When I move on to the strategy section, I can actually see a heat map showing me the different strategies which are available for this particular category. I can also see that these are distributed according to different ease of implementations. Like there is a contract renegotiation strategy, which is available with a low ease of implementation. But there is a competitive supplier evaluation through which we can actually focus on partnering with regional suppliers in order to ease and remove the complexity of our supplier network. Further, we also have contract sourcing project section through which all the documents or all the transactions happening under a category can be viewed as an umbrella under this category workbench dashboard. Now I can go on talking about the different sections of the category workbench, and there are different contributors to each and every part of this category workbench. But further, now I'll be moving on to the next agenda for today, or the next pain point I want to cover, which is through our third-party risk management solution. On my next screen, you are seeing a project document which is open, and you can see that there is a risk profile section. So this particular project is belonging to the IT category, and there are several suppliers which I have added to a project. My third-party risk management solution actually helps me determine the aggregated risk profile for these suppliers. If I go on to the risk profile section, my third-party risk management solution highlights all the different risk profiles which are there according to the rating of the risks involved. Now you can see over here that, for an example, there is a dependence on subcontractors which leads to a high risk. That means that there are multiple subcontractors or subsidiaries involved along with a particular supplier, which might result in some kind of delay in delivery time, or might be these subcontractors are belonging to regions or bases which are currently affected due to pandemic or unfavorable geopolitical conditions. This can help us recognize the high risk potential due to the subcontractors. What we can do as a project owner or as a user of the platform, we can actually have some due diligence forms triggered for applicable controls for a subcontractor control form, or maybe, you know, I want to gather information for some financial viability for these suppliers. I can actually have some due diligence for that. Now, depending upon the assessment of these due diligence forms, my platform will automatically go on to tag these suppliers as a go or a no-go for a particular project. Using this, we can actually take a decision to whether involve in transactional or procurement activities with a supplier or not. Now, coming on to the last part or the last pain point in today's session is the need of digitization and automation, which can actually ease the day-to-day user activities and empathize with them. In order to achieve better business continuity, there is a huge surge in adoption of a hybrid model of working. The employees and the users now need a more user-friendly AI technology-enabled platform, which can actually help them in day-to-day activities, like maybe buying a simple office supply or buying a laptop. How our platform actually comes in help over there. Let me quickly show you through an example. I have a chatbot enabled on my platform. This chatbot is actually empowered by GEP Minerva, which is our AI empowered engine. And if I go on to select an option of buying an item, my platform automatically asks me that what I want to buy. I do not need to go into the complexity of searching different categories, different sections in the platform, which I'm not used to. At a simple click and simple typing of some keywords, like maybe I want to search for a laptop, I can simply type the keyword laptop and search for the product over here itself. My platform automatically suggests me some categories to go through. I can select the laptop categories. And when I select the laptop category, what happens is basically depending upon the buying policies and different buying channels, which are approved by my procurement team, contract team, I can actually see some favorable or suitable buying channels. Using the guided buying functionality of GP Smart, it will guide me to a link where I can see all the favorable buying channels like contracts, some existing catalogs, supply catalogs or item masters. I can also have some existing contracts at use, or maybe a punch out channel to purchase a laptop. So you can see that how a user does not need to hover on into entire platform, and just using our chatbot and guided buying functionality in a combination can make a purchase at a go in some few minutes, very easy. This actually shows the AI enabled platform, user friendliness of the platform. And as part of today's session, this was pretty much which I wanted to show. And I hope you guys find it very helpful and insightful. I will look forward to work with you guys in future. Now I'm going to hand over my session, hand over to Binny, which is from the consulting arm, and she will be taking you to the next session.
Thank you, Ayushi, for the GEP Smart demo. Good afternoon, I'm Binny, a senior manager with GEP based in South China. I manage consulting service in North Asia. Before I joined GEP, I have the same background as you. I have more than 10 years working experience in multiple industries in procurement and supply chain, such as Mars in FMCG, Alibaba in e-commerce, and Lenovo in high-tech. I have experience in almost all indirect sourcing categories, and I also used to lead the entire indirect sourcing team. All those experiences really helped me to bring value to my customers from GEP. Today, I'm going to introduce 3 topics to you. Who is GEP? What does GEP do? And how we bring value to our customers, / case studies. Let me put up my slides. Who is GEP? GEP is a global leader in procurement and supply chain, recognized by independent research firms such as Gartner, Forrester. We started in America back in 22 years ago by offering e-auction tool. At that time, it was very popular, but soon we realized that technology alone is not enough. A comprehensive solution combined with strategy, technology, people, and process can ultimately lead to the successful transformation. And that is why we quickly reposition ourselves as a strategic partner for supply chain and procurement. Our offering combines 3 elements, as you can see in the screen, the 3 blue squares: strategic consulting, managed service, and technology offering, focusing on procurement and supply chain. In the world, we have more than 450 customers, and we help our customers to manage more than $200 billion annually. And those huge amount of work was done by our 5,000 employees located in 22 offices around the globe. By the way, our customers, most of them are Fortune 500s. Let's zoom in and focus on Asia. We have 8 offices with more than 300 employees in Asia. As you can see from figures here, we are quite Asia-Pacific focused. And that is because our customers, the multinational companies, they set up their procurement and supply chain center in APAC, where the suppliers are located. On the other hand, Asia-Pacific is very diverse when it comes to culture and spoken language. And that's why we are also diverse, our team. Our team can speak the most common spoken language in APAC. In addition, we also offer people to support our clients on site in some of the areas or cities that's not listed here. For example, Hong Kong, Indonesia, and Thailand. Moving on. What does GEP do? As you can see, this is the overview of what GEP does. In general speaking, we help our client to walk through the procurement and strategy and transformation journey. That include all the elements that help the organization of procurement become more mature. For example, KPI, talent, capability, processes, digital strategies, category management, and etc. Majority of our work is on consulting, strategy work, but also our clients will need us to help them to identify and implement those opportunities to make them realized. And that's what our managed service does. You can see on the screen, the left column is more strategic focus. We help our clients to do category management and business partnering. And in the middle, it's more source to contract work, such as spend analysis, strategic sourcing, and tail spend management. And on the right-hand side, something we are very familiar, P2P. We help them with PO processing, and catalog management. All the offering we did was supported by a COE, the Center of Excellence. No matter where the clients are located, that brings out the best practice and the category know-how. Besides the managed service and consulting service, we have the technology and tools that make a very good triangle. And one of the products in technology and tools is the GEP Smart that you just seen by Payush. Moving on, how does GEP bring value to our customers? The case study. The first case is a German headquartered pharma company. We have been partnering with these customers for more than 10 years. Phase 1 started back in 2011. This customer has a huge operation in China. It's very decentralized and tactical focus. So GEP acts like a partner and COE for our customers for more than 10 years, 9 years. Starting from 2019, we transfer to phase 2. The goal is to reduce the OPEX by 30 to 50% annually. And that's when the transformation starts. Before phase 2, client has colleagues in more than 80 countries. And when we start to do transformation, we invented something called external operation model, with the delivery by GEP in 8 delivery centers. Now, it has been after 2 years since the phase 2 started, and we have already realized the millions of euros saving target that we planned for our customers back in 2 years ago. And we hope to bring them more values in the long run after 2022. Moving on, the second case study, very different one. It's a French headquartered beauty and cosmetics industry. Sustainability has been a hot topic, including environment, social responsibilities, and human rights. And our customers want to focus on social inclusion initiatives. In short, we want to help our clients to facilitating people from poverty communities to gain more employment opportunities using clients' big purchasing power. The target is to get more than 500 people employed for 2021. 3 years, 1,500 for 3 years. What do we do? 3 work streams. The first one, identify opportunities within the current supplier pool, which means a lot of marketing research. We need to find the right suppliers out of the big supplier pool, find the right communities, and find the right NGOs. Second work stream, define strategy and operational model. For example, we need to define the R&R, create process, templates, and governance structure to embed the new sustainability initiative into the existing procurement process. Third work stream, the execution. That includes huge amount of communication with suppliers and cooperation with them to help them realize the importance of sustainability, the social inclusion, and also to get the employment happen. The target was stretched, but the result fit. We overachieved the 500 FTE target for 2021. And we also settle the set of process, R&Rs, and templates for the current procurement process, so that the client's procurement organization can use the set of tools for their long-run sustainability initiative. Last but not least, it's a win-win for customers and their suppliers. Customers got sustainability realized, and suppliers get employment troubleshooting. So that's the second case. That's the end of my sharing. I hope my sharing brings you more insights of what GEP can bring value to our customers. And also, it's the end of our webinar. I see there are some questions, and